This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Welcome to the Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast. My name is Sam, and I'm your host as always. And like always, I'm joined by Richard Blackaby.
Always good to join you, Sam.
Oh, it's just fantastic all the time, always. Well, it's good to be back in studio and tackling another leadership topic. I just want to say a quick thanks to all those who rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And,
especially when they rate us highly.
Yeah, those are especially those 1 stars. You know, we gotta talk about that, but it does mean a lot to us that if you take the time just to leave us a rating and review, and that helps other people find out about us and share the word. And so we just want to say a quick thanks up at the top.
Yeah.
And with that out of the way, let's turn to the topic at hand. And today, probably many people have faced an organization that they've come into, and it hasn't been all that it could be, or perhaps it has been significantly less than it should be. And what do you do with an organization that needs to be turned around? And so today we're looking at that and some steps and some principles to guide you if you happen to find yourself in an organization that needs to be turned around. And with that, Richard, why don't you tell us what are some of the things that we can do to help an organization turn around? How should we approach that?
Well, Sam, that's one of those real key issues for leaders. That's why leaders are needed and necessary, because things do deteriorate, they lose focus, they get in trouble. And oftentimes the answer is, well, let's bring a new leader in to try to fix this.
Yeah.
And so you could be an entire company or organization. It could be a church that you come into as a pastor. It could be that on a more smaller scale, perhaps you're just given a new job. Okay, now you're in charge of this. The last 2 guys who were in charge of this area couldn't seem to get this thing solved.
Yeah, it may just be a department.
So whatever level of responsibility it might be, when you come in, how do you make it better? And especially if you're leading people and they're looking to you. And the last 3 managers they had all left discouraged and upset, and in a kind of a ugly sort of way. And now you're walking in the door. And what should give them any confidence that you're going to be any better, any more successful than the last 3 people that all failed? And so several things I would say about that. And again, as we do with these podcasts, they certainly, this applies certainly to the business community, also applies to the church. And, I would even say sometimes in families, I've had those moments where I came home from a trip and my wife had been doing all she could to get something worked out, and she kind of needed me to give it my best shot. And so I want to come in and not to show up my wife, but just to try to help and make something better that needs help. And obviously I want to maybe take a different tack than what didn't work for my wife. So, that can happen in many different contexts.
And vice versa.
That's right.
I bet there's some things that you had a hard time tackling. And
that is true. That's true.
Just that fresh perspective or the different eyes.
Yeah. It's funny because just even recently, Lisa and I have talked through a couple things, and she just had a great perspective, and I just hadn't thought of that, and it's like, that's excellent. I mean, I just didn't see that. And so that is part of just a fresh leader. It is a fresh perspective. It could be a fresh approach, a fresh style. But several things I would just say in terms of whatever the role is you have, you walk in the door the first day. Number one is you've got to exude confidence. And I kind of parse that word fairly carefully. I say you need to portray confident. Now, you may not feel as confident as you look. Inside, you may have some reservations and trepidations.
Yeah.
Your knees may be knocking, but you don't need to necessarily show all that to the people you're leading. They need to see someone who's confident. And so you got to walk in, and you need to speak not as, well, I'll do my best, or I'll try, we'll see what happens. You need to be talking in terms of, we're going to get this thing turned around. Just hold on, we'll get this thing. This is going to work out. And you've got to convey that, because people are all looking to the leader. When things are going well, people don't necessarily care what the leader thinks, but when things are going poorly, all of a sudden they're listening to every word. What hope? Because it's been said that leaders are they're dealers in hope. And people need hope if they're going to keep trying. They're going to not give up. And leaders need to dispense hope. And so when they watch you and listen to you, they're either going to gain hope or they're going to lose hope and say, this guy is as bewildered as we are. What hope do we have in that? The one thing I would say about that is, if you're going to convey confidence, certainly you can conduct yourself confidently. You can physically be smiling and calm and walking about very purposefully. But you do need to base your confidence in something. And I've known people that just kept throwing out cliches all the time. This is the best day of my life. Every day is the best day of your life. Well, that's a cliche. Some days aren't that great. You're just saying something that's not in any way linked to reality. And so if you're going to speak confidently, you need to have a way of basing that on something. For some leaders, it's based on their track record. When I came in to run a seminary that really needed a turnaround, I'd never run a seminary before. So I could say, we're going to get this thing turned around, but they could legitimately say, well, how do you know? You've never had to get accredited before. You never led a faculty before, and so on. You never answered to a board of trustees before. And I would have to say, well, that's true, but I have led a church and it needed to turn around, and that we turned that around very successfully. And here's all the other things in my track record that have been successful. And so coming out of a successful leadership track record, I've got every reason to believe that I'll also be able to lead this and turn it around.
Right.
Sometimes your confidence may be in God. It just may be, listen, I've walked with God all my life. He's never let me down yet. And I'm convinced God has answers for us here too. It could be that you have a plan that you're coming in with, at least the big picture plans. Maybe there's trends. Maybe you'd say, I know it's been tough, but everything is trending positive now. If we just kind of hold on, there's lots of reason to have hope. But find something to tack it onto. Don't just be a cliche driver that, wow, what a great day it is, and everyone's looking. It's storming and power outages, and they look at you and say, well, you're just not in touch with reality. So exude confidence and don't be wishy-washy. Say things with some confidence, but as best you can, link it to something that it actually shows that you know what you're talking about. The second thing is just do your homework. If you're going to turn something around, you really need to understand how it works. You need to understand how it got to where it is. If you're going to get it out of there, because oftentimes there are problems with organizations that just keep on tripping it up over and over again. And if you don't address those issues, then it's, even though you may work really hard, you're going to still just end up getting tripped up just like everybody else did.
Well, and so how do you suss that out to find out? Like when you're doing your homework, obviously you can, maybe if there's been a report on the organization or whatever, but are you conducting interviews with all the middle managers, or all the way down the line? Or
you're asking lots of questions.
At performance reviews.
You're looking at lots of questions. You're looking at financial statements. How long has this been trending? When did this first start going south? And what happened? What were the decisions around that time that were made? And then all of a sudden things are going bad, and all of a sudden people are bailing out and leaving the organization. Or when you first arrive, you're going to basically see a bunch of symptoms. You're going to see a bunch of surface issues that are just glaringly obvious. You got to ask the right questions that get down to the root causes, and so. That's why it's usually wise. Don't come in with all the answers right away, because when you first walk in the door, all you see are the symptoms. And so if you come up with a solution right off the bat, you're just chasing after symptoms. Let people know that you're doing your homework and you're asking lots of questions. And I've seen organizations like that, and I've been a part of that, where the word starts getting out. Boy, the new boss, he's been talking to everybody. He's asking all kinds of questions, and he's walking the floor and just talking to people at every level. And he really seems pretty curious. Just I wonder what he's getting at. I wonder what he's hearing. I wonder what he's learning. That's usually a good sign to say, this guy's he's digging deep. He's asking lots of questions. He's got a little notepad. He's just writing down all kinds of stuff. And he's asking for these financial statements and these records and these minutes. And boy, he's spending a lot of time just poring over everything. And he's walking the grounds. He's checking things out and verifying it for himself, and not just taking people's word for it. And it looks like he's really doing thorough investigation. And that again, that's going to send some confidence to people to say, this guy's not just sitting back in the corner office just coming up with plans, like out of touch with reality. So you've got to exude confidence. If you walk in the door, you've got to appear confident. And secondly, you got to do your homework. And third, you've got to confront issues. If something needs to be turned around, then clearly some things have got to be changed. You can't just go sit behind that nice desk in that corner office and start pontificating. Something's got to be different.
Well, you're likely there because there is a problem. And
and so simply just putting your hand lightly on the steering wheel and just carrying on down the highway is not going to do the trick. You've got to start wading in, and of course that takes courage. I remember when I first came to a church that had been about 7-8 years of perpetual decline. And they desperately needed to stop the hemorrhaging of members leaving, and they need to start turning things around and doing some positive things. One of the things I found, and just checking and observing, was that they had a number of people that were misplaced. They were in the wrong area of service. We had one person that was in charge of hospitality that was just a very gruff person who rubbed people the wrong way. And it was like, you know what, there's lots of ways where you could serve very effectively, but not in hospitality. She literally was yelling at people who were trying to help her. And then she'd come to me and complain that she couldn't get any help. And so I remember just having to have a heart-to-heart with her to say, well, it sounds to me like you're just not serving in the place you're most gifted. Let's try to get you matched up with your giftedness. Now, she was in a job that she thought had some prestige to it, and that put her on the church council, and so she wanted a job with prestige, even though she wasn't good at it. And I found several people like that if we were ever going to make progress, and these were well-meaning people that wanted to hang around, but they couldn't keep doing that job if we're ever going to see some progress. And then there's certainly lots of examples in the business world as well. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple, one of the first things he saw was that they were offering too many different lines of product, and that was sort of the mentality. Let's have a lot of options, and he reduced the options. And it's actually same with Harold Schultz. He left being CEO at Starbucks for a while, and things began to drift. Howard Schultz, did I say? So he came back, and
I don't know.
Harold, did I say? Harold. Yeah, I just can't read my own right. Howard, yeah. He came back, and they were selling CDs and selling all kinds of stuff, and he streamlined again. And that it's sort of counterintuitive. The idea was, hey, we got customers in the store. Let's get as much out there to sell as possible. And so
well, if you've ever been in a place where there's just a ton of options, like you're paralyzed by the options, and so if there's only 3 or 4 or 5, then you can better make, as a customer, you can better make that decision.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose if you're in like a Walmart or something, you may want even there they only give you so many options, but if you're like standing in line to get your drink, you only have so much time to peruse this, along the shelves as you're moving up for your latte or something. And so, those were tough, unpopular decisions. It's like, well, this is a great product. Yeah, that's good. But
nobody's buying it.
But sales are actually down and profits are down. And so it's counterintuitive to say, well, then let's sell less so that profits go up. But when you've done your homework and you've tracked sales and so on, and you're doing customer satisfaction interviews and so on, then at a certain point you've got to make those hard calls. And they probably won't be popular. There'll be people who will disagree with you. And that's where it takes courage to confront those issues. And in a church, I had to confront several people and say, well, we can't have you do this anymore. And you always run the risk, what if they get mad? What if they leave the church? We can't afford to lose anyone else, but we can't afford to keep doing what we're doing either.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to change. It's more important to make changes than to keep everybody happy. So
Yeah.
a fourth one, again, just it's kind of common knowledge that you need to do this, but to celebrate small wins. When you first arrive, now there may be some things that are just being done so horribly that you just have to make drastic changes immediately. You may have to just lay off some people or just stop some products or whatever. But oftentimes, what you can do is get some of that low-lying fruit right away. Just you walk in the door and you see some things that just obviously need to be changed immediately. I remember I think I've shared in a podcast before, just coming to the seminary in August, and with everything that we're doing, no one had just seen it as a priority to just weed eat. And there's thistles all around growing, 3-4 feet high all around the parking lot and the entranceway. And I mean, as I arrive the very first day, I'm just immediately and just appalled at the appearance. And of course, they're all worrying about internal things and other matters.
We got bigger issues.
Yeah, but it's like you don't understand. Image is a big issue, and so it didn't take a lot to like weed eat thistles around the parking lot, but it changed the whole look right away. And immediately, the first week that I'm there, already people are showing up to work and saying, wow, things are already looking a lot better around here. This looks much more clean and kept up and cared for. And sometimes people don't even necessarily, there might be some changes that are so small, people don't even notice them, but they just sense something's different. And so and then you celebrate those things. And when you do have a success, or when I remember being at the seminary and just maybe having a great day where a couple of new students came and inquired and indicated they were going to come and attend and enroll in the next semester. You celebrate some of that. Just let people know. I know we've been in decline. I know we've had kind of a low student count, but hey, today we had 3 people say that they're planning to come, and that we can certainly celebrate that. And this is the most we've had. And I remember when I came to my church and it had declined for years, when we would have like the best attendance since I'd been there, I always had a few naysayers say, oh yeah, well, I remember back 15 years ago when we had twice that many. And I would say, well, we're not there yet, but we're headed that way. But you know what? Since I've been here, this is the best. We're running now more than we were when I got here, and so let's celebrate that. And so it's not that you're blowing your own horn, and I think you have to celebrate it in a way that doesn't make it sound like you just are bragging about yourself and your leadership. Yeah. Certainly in a church, you can celebrate what God is doing. In a company, you can celebrate what the staff are doing. Hey, I've been here 2 months, and I really want to just commend the staff because they really hunkered down, and already we're seeing results from just people's best efforts and good attitudes, and so you don't just make it sound like you're just bragging on yourself, but just say, hey, good stuff is happening, and I just want you all to know. Yeah. Put out a quick memo and say, hey, this week we got this report back. We're rated higher than they've ever rated us before, and we got this customer review. Just thought you guys like to see what someone said about their interaction with us this week. Really encourages me that we're on the right track, and just create a culture of success and say, hey, this isn't earth-shattering. But this week we've had 3 different customers say something really kind, and I thought it gives us an indication that we're on the right track. And, and then maybe one last one before a break is just work hard. You can't turn around an organization by slacking off, by just coasting. It's and I think it's important that people know that the leader is working hard. I know that when I came to each organization I've been to. I typically, especially if I'm officing at the office building somewhere, I like to get there early. I typically was the first guy at work at the church I led, at the seminary I led. And in both cases, when you were approaching the building from driving in to the property, my office window was pretty obvious. You knew who the president's office window was. And so I liked having that light on. If I was in town, I like people to see when they're coming in early and they realize, well, the president's already here. He beat me. He's already at work. You have to be careful with that. You can abuse that, but especially in the early stages of turnarounds, they need to know that you rolled up your sleeves and like you are serious about getting this thing turned around, and you're not showing up late and leaving early and just hoping things change. You're setting a model for everyone else, saying, listen, we're going to all have to work hard and make some sacrifices, but if we do, the reward is going to be awesome. And so, that's just going to take some hard work, and it needs to show that you've done your homework. And when you have a trustee meeting or staff meeting, you're prepared. You've got a lot of things all in place, and reports are ready. And you go meet with your board of trustees, and you've got a whole series of recommendations already and changes you want to make. And it just indicates this guy's dust is not settling on this guy. He is he's moving, he's working, he's studying. And that's going to give us some confidence that just give this guy some time, and this organization is going to be in the best shape it's ever been.
Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll wrap up when we come back. Twice a year, Blackaby Ministries hosts a spiritual leadership coaching workshop in the Atlanta area. The focus of this workshop is learning how to ask the right questions to help move people onto God's agenda. The next workshop is October 26th to 28th, and registration is open now. The early bird rate is available until September 26th, and space is limited. To find out more and to register, visit blackabycoaching.org. Links will be in the show notes. All right, Richard, we've seen a lot of great examples of what one can do when needing to turn something around, exude confidence, do your homework, work hard. What are some other things that you can give us that would help us when we're faced with that turnaround scenario?
Yeah, some of these things are just intuitive for leaders that are skilled at this, but there's some things I think you can just consciously try to do. One is just talk about the destination. A lot of people get transfixed on where they are at the moment.
Yeah.
And if things are bad, sales are down, revenue is tight, attendance is low, that's all that they see. And so I would say, well, I want to be aware of reality, but I also want to be aware of where we're going. What's our destination? And we're actually a little bit closer there this week than we were last week. We're still not where we want to be, but we've made progress. And so I often would talk about where we're headed. And I would say things like, I see a day not too far away where this whole auditorium is going to be filled with people. And I see a day when we're going to have to think about going to a second service, or I see a day when we're going to have to start talking about building plans when we outgrow this facility, and you say stuff like that, and it has to be couched in something that's a reality. You have to be seeing some growth or whatever, but what that does is it gets their eyes off of just the bad place you are at the moment, and it helps you get the idea we're moving somewhere, and where we're moving is good, and
it's forward, and it's not backwards.
Yeah,
that's interesting. It also makes me think that if you're going to do that, then you also have to have vision coming into it, or at least pretty soon after arriving. Yeah, you would need to have that. What is that destination? You need to know that as well.
Yeah, and it's great to have it as it's called a vision often, and a vision is visual. You need to be able to picture it somehow. And so I would say, well, describe this place that we're all going, and describe how awesome it will be when we are that organization, and we're functioning that way, and unpack it for us. And that helps us know what we need to be doing so we can get there. So talk about that. You're not there yet, but you don't want people just wallowing in where they are at the moment. You want people to be not just talking about how bad it is at the moment, but talk about how good it'll be once we get out of this place and we move forward. Also, I'd just say be open to good ideas. If you're going to turn things around as a leader, it's not going to be all your ideas. You're not going to have all the answers. more than likely your organization is going to come up with some of the best ideas. And that for me as a leader, everywhere I've ever been, we've done new things and creative things. And I would say the vast majority of those things were not my idea. They were staff's idea. They were people on the ground that were day in and day out doing stuff. And then they would come and say, you know what, I've got an idea, we could make this better. Or have you ever thought about that? Or I'm seeing a lot of organizations like ours do this, and I think we could do that. And you just have to be the kind of person that just is an expert at recognizing good ideas and not being afraid of them. And there's been a few times, and you've bounced some ideas off me where I've had to kind of go away and say, let me think on that. It's like, this podcast, is your idea. I think it was, my first thought was, it's not really crossed my mind to even do that. And do I have the time and do we have the technology? And so I've had to kind of mull over some of it, but then you realize, yeah, well, let's try it, let's do it, and so if you really want to get sort of a fresh wind flowing through an organization, you don't have to come up with all the answers. Just create a culture where you have an open door where people can feel free when they've got this idea. They just want to bounce off you, and you can't do everything people suggest.
Sure.
But give it a careful listen, and you'll pick up enough good ideas and implement them that will go a long way to changing the way things are done.
Yeah, and that has an energizing, at least for me, it has an energizing effect on people. If people are, if everybody's feels free to express new ideas, or even if it's not something that ends up happening, but that culture where people are free to sort of say, hey, well, what about this? Or, I was thinking maybe we do that. And that can really bring energy to a place as well.
Because otherwise, when things have been going, you just show me a place that's been in decline for a while, and the good ideas are just not there anymore. Either no one follows through with them, or accepts them, or listens to them,
or believes them.
There's no credibility. So be open to ideas. Just a couple of last ones just to toss out there. Another one is just to be flexible. When you come in, especially in a turnaround, a lot of times there's going to be some. You're going to have to adjust on the fly.
Yeah.
There's stuff you don't know yet.
I bet it won't go exactly the way you planned.
Yeah, and so two things in particular, I think, be flexible with your means. You know where you want to get to, and we can try this. This may not end up being the best method. Maybe we do it for a year or so, and then we're going to get a better approach. But be flexible with means, and be flexible with timing, too. You may, of course, if you're trying to lead a turnaround, the sooner the better. Sometimes you realize, okay, I've been pushing these folks just a little too hard, I think. I'm starting to hear some friction and weariness and crankiness, and so let's back off. And I know I said by January 1 we would do this, but maybe May 1 we need to do this, and we'll give it a few more months or something. So just be flexible. Don't get too ironclad in your plan that you walked in the door with, that you aren't in touch with kind of the reality of your people and circumstances. And two last things, the ninth one I would say is just keep your humor. It can be really tough and really stressful to turn things around. You come into a hard place, a difficult place, and humor does at least two things. One, it for your own sake, it keeps you from just being in a dark, low
spiraling
place. It's just a lot of difficult stuff to have to deal with all the time. But also it helps your people. It eases the pain. I mean, it's painful to change things, and so add some humor to it. It will just sort of it'd be like an ointment at times. And you've been in a meeting. It's been a lot of hard discussions, some hard decisions. Emotions been out there, and then you crack a joke, or use some self-effacing comment, or you point something out, or tell a funny story that happened, and people are laughing, and you realize, you know what, this humor kind of bonds people together, and it makes people realize life is still good. These are hard demanding days. But life is good, and these people, it's good to work with these people. And when they laugh together, they realize I enjoy working with these other folks. And so, this is making some sacrifices, but let's hold on, because I'm still being able to laugh at work and enjoy myself. And the last one is just enlist allies. If you're going to turn things around and you're the leader, you can't do it all by yourself, and you've got to be getting and helping people to buy in. And if you walk in from the outside, maybe you got hired to lead this organization, or you were hired to be the pastor of this church. They may give you the benefit of doubt for a little bit, but that's different than having buy-in. And so I always found that, especially when I came somewhere, typically I did this all the time, but especially when you arrive, you need to be having breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, meetings during the day in your office, walking about, just talking to people. But there's great power in getting, especially your direct reports and vice presidents, whatever people you work with that have the most influence, and go have breakfast with them or lunch with them and get to know them and know about their family and share your heart. And there's a certain point where even if they're not entirely sure about the idea yet, they're getting to trust you and to like you and to know that you care about them. And if you can't do that, if you can't be enlisting other people that they're going to stand with you now, then your change, your turnaround is always vulnerable. And that has surprised a lot of people. They've come into a church or a company, and they were making changes that really need to be made, and they thought everybody was on board. It's obvious we need to change this. And then one day they get fired, they get let go, and they're shocked, or they're massive amount of people that are just leaving the company and going somewhere else, and they're thinking, I thought they were all in on this. I thought they all wanted to make the sacrifices to make the changes, and they realized, no, they'd never bought into this. They were given lip service, but I just assumed putting out memos and having speeches in front of the whole staff was enough, and I never really got to know where people were and what was going on in their hearts. So enlist allies and talk to them and share your heart in a way, and just spend one-on-one time with them till you have a sense, these guys, I feel like we do understand each other, and they are on board, and they've asked their hard questions, and I've answered them, and now I think I'm not going to be doing this change by myself. I've got a team. And teams are always far more powerful than just talented individuals.
Well, this has been really great stuff in some real practical ways for anyone who ever finds himself in a turnaround situation. And hopefully, this will be very helpful to those listening. And if you have any questions ever, just always know that you can reach out to us, podcast@blackaby.org. Send us your questions or comments, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.